Hello and welcome to Mystery Us. I'm Tony Pratt, your host for Mystery Us, and today on the program our guest is Barry Jernigan. Welcome to Mystery Us, Barry.
Thank you, Tony.
Now, Barry, you are the president of the Nashville chapter for the NCFM. What is the NCFM?
Well, actually, I'm the president of the Kentucky-Tennessee chapter of the National Coalition for Men.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, what is the National Coalition for Men? What do they do?
The National Coalition for Men is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, men's rights organizations in the United States. We are primarily involved with promoting public awareness of men's rights issues, such as men who were victims of domestic violence, men who were victims of false charges filed against them, men who were victims of paternity fraud, things like that. Those are probably what I call the big three issues similar to that.
Okay. Now, a lot of times men are abused and it just goes unrecognized. I notice there's no shelters for men, right? I mean, you can't be if you're a victim of domestic abuse and you're a male. Can you go to a women's shelter? I mean, how does that?
There are some shelters who will accept men who are victims of domestic violence. Most of the time, they are men who are victims whose partners are also men. What's really amazing is that the domestic violence associations, and I've researched this, follow what is called the Duluth model, which is the radical feminist model of domestic violence that teaches that society is generally oppressive to women and that the microcosmic situation in the family is that the husbands are abusive to women, and that's why there has to be more programs for women than for men. What's really interesting is that they refuse to recognize that women can be just as violent as men in relationships, so they actually refuse service to women whose abusive partners are women as well, which is amazing to me that they would actually refuse service to women when they claim that they are egalitarian.
Right, and there's a double standard in society where if women are, you know, for example, charged with some kind of child abuse or sexual abuse or even murder, and in the case of a local lady who actually shot her husband with a double-barreled shotgun, and she served a few months and was released because she claimed she was abused, but there was no charges were filed at the time and all this stuff. And men in the same situation, they'd be in jail for the rest of their life. I mean,
well, it depends on the circumstance. It depends on you know, the judges and the lawyers that you have. What we basically have in America today are two different forces that basically work against men in these circumstances. One is the institution of chivalry, which says that we must give more attention and more help to women and children, and that men are basically to be sacrificed or to sacrifice themselves, like in war and all of that. And the other one is the emergence of a radical feminism, which also basically says the same thing, that, you know, we have to pay attention to women and ignore men in these circumstances because women have been ignored in society for so long, and so now it's time to, you know, switch things around and to have women being the ones getting the help and not men.
right, only women are the victims and only men are the perpetrators.
Right, and that's not true. Erin Pizzey from England is a woman who established the very first domestic violence shelters in the world, in England, in the 1970s. And she said that the problem is that people abuse people. It's not a male versus female problem. It's couples abuse each other. And the real ones who really suffer in the circumstances are the children, because the cycle continues. If you have a woman who's abusive to her husband, then it's very likely that her children are also going to be abusive to their spouses, whether they're male or female. Erin Pizzey herself was abused by her mother. And she wanted to do something to help everyone, you know, and even when she spoke out about this situation and said, well, we need to help men as well as women, she was booed, you know, she was called names, you know, by the feminists in England. She had, you know, a lot of problems, and even to this day, you know, she still has problems being accepted. And she's the one that actually started the domestic violence shelter movement in England, and she even says that this is a serious problem, that men are not being, you know, treated in the same way as women.
What percentage, I mean, do you think the vast majority of abuse is male toward female, or where do the percentages lie there?
I believe the United States government figures for the number of men abused annually by a domestic partner is 800 and I think it's 875,000 men annually are abused, and in fact that's the figure that is used by the Kentucky Domestic Violence Association on their website. They have a PSA video where they actually have that figure there. That's an awful lot of people a year. I mean, that's more than the entire population in 2007 of the state of Wyoming. That's more than the entire population of the state of North Dakota. South Dakota, the District of Columbia.
Would you say that it goes largely unreported, though, just because of the chivalry thing as well? I mean, men don't want to admit.
Exactly. There is that problem. But another problem has to do with the police in reference to how they're being trained to deal with domestic violence situations. And a lot of them are being coached by people who were instructed by the feminists. This is what you must do. Right. They have scenarios where the most that a woman will inflict is like a scratch on a man's arm or something like that. Well, you know, anybody, you know, any guy who's been a victim of domestic violence, which I haven't, but I've, you know, talked to guys who have, say that's laughable. You know, women use weapons, you know, they use rolling pins, they use, you know.
Yeah, I knew this guy who was
guns and knives, you know.
Who ran the, what's it called, the Hall of Fame Motor Inn restaurant down there, and his fiance, he had paid for her to have her teeth fixed, and they had the plastic temporary teeth in there until her porcelains came in, and she had beat him in the head with an iron, and he put his hands on his head, and it was bruised. You could see the outline of the iron, you know, on the other side of his hand, and of course he slapped her, and the thing came out of her. The temporary plastic thing that where she was getting her teeth fixed came out, so he's the one that went to jail.
Right.
He went to jail and had to have, you know, stitches, and he had concussions, and he nearly died from it, and she didn't even get arrested.
Right, and there are circumstances where women are arrested.
Yeah.
But like for instance, at the NCFM right now, we have a cop, a retired cop from the NYPD, and he says that one of the biggest problems that we have is that even policemen who are victims of domestic violence will not get assistance, and their fellow cops will not help them because they have a code that they follow, and they don't want to lose their jobs. Basically, you know, if they violate their policies, then they could lose their jobs. So even if, you know, they say, well, this is wrong, it still goes unnoticed because, you know, they could lose their jobs. So that's one of the biggest problems that they have.
Now you had a recent speaker
because of the AWA, the Violence Against Women Act. You know, the
Violence Against Women Act. You had a recent speaker at Vanderbilt University. Now who was he, and what was his topic?
Dr. Richard Driscoll is one of our members. He lives in Knoxville. He is a writer. He's a psychologist. He's a marriage counselor. And he has a new book that just came out. It's called You Still Don't Understand, which is about relationship dynamics between men and women. And in the book, he states that, and this is from, you know, lots of marriage counselors have this same information, that women in relationships will start arguments more, and women will escalate arguments more. And in fact, men's natural reaction in an argument with their wife is to placate, is to withdraw. Right. And the basic reason for that is a defense mechanism. Because when a woman raises her voice, a man's stress level instantly goes up. So basically, he's protecting his health by, and in fact, some guys even have been known to leave the house, you know, to get away from. In fact, I have a theory that basically what was going on when that man was shot, you know, by the air guards in Miami, is that's exactly what was going on. He was reacting naturally. His wife was having an argument with him on the plane. He wanted to get away from her. And they thought he was a terrorist, I guess, and they shot him. But this is what Dr. Driscoll says in the book. Now, we did have a presentation at Vanderbilt, but we had no audience. So there really wasn't a presentation. Nobody showed up for it.
Okay, well.
But at any rate, it was an experience. I look at everything as experience. You know, you learn something.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, I didn't promote it well. That's right. That's right.
Sorry about that.
It was my first promotion. And
well, things, you know, the best laid plans of mice and men. Now, if people are in this situation or they need to contact your organization. Do you have a website that they can?
Yes, NCFM.org. That's National Coalition for Men. .org, and we are with the Kentucky-Tennessee chapter of the organization, and they can contact me via email. It's bjernigan7040@bellsouth.net.
Okay, and we'll have that all up on the screen for our viewers. But it's not just men domestic violence. I mean, there's a lot of different type of situations. What are some of the other cases?
Paternity fraud is
fraud.
another one. In fact, there's a man that I know in Georgia. His name is Carnell Smith. He was on Dr. Phil, in fact, an episode of Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
I would love to have Carnell Smith. You know, maybe he would come on your show. That would be great to have Carnell on your show. Anyway, he is an advocate who fights against paternity fraud. Paternity fraud is a situation where a woman knowingly puts the wrong man's name on a birth certificate as the father of a child.
Right.
And then she tries to get the court to force him to pay child support for this child. And it's a very serious problem in this country. And in fact, in the Daily News Journal, a Murfreesboro paper, in 2007, they had an article about this problem. The judges in Tennessee are demanding, they're so overwhelmed with these cases in their courts, they're demanding that the Tennessee legislature make a decision about this problem because they don't know what to do. I mean, you've got this child that needs child support, but you've got this guy that he submits the DNA test, paternity test, it proves false. It's not, he's not the father, but what are they supposed to do? You know, the child needs child support, so, you know, they're basically not caring about his civil rights, they're caring more about the concern, you know, for the child. The problem that I have with this is I think that the legislature already made a decision. Aggravated perjury is a crime. If you lie under oath in court, you are committing aggravated perjury.
Right.
It's, I believe, a Class D felony. It's punishable by imprisonment in a penitentiary. So why is it that when these women go to court and they then lie under oath, which they have to be doing that in the courtroom, to claim that he is the father of the child, when the paternity test is submitted and he says he's not, then how can they not be charging these women with aggravated perjury? You know, that's my question.
Well,
but,
maybe I guess because
again, chivalry
they're not for
comes
sure
into play. You know,
I mean, I guess they need to go on Maury or one of these shows.
I don't know.
Paternity tests, and,
but you know, and there's a whole.
But that
you know,
doesn't get the guy off the hook. In other words, she claims he's the father, and they prove DNA, I'm not the father, but they still are ordered to pay court-ordered child support.
It happens all the time. They're supposed to still pay the child support, and if they don't, they get thrown in jail. This is a serious problem.
Wasn't there even an example of a sperm donors that had to pay child support?
That was in Scandinavia, I believe. Yes, there were two lesbians who decided they wanted a baby, and they got a guy who was a friend of theirs to submit sperm so they could have a baby, so he did that. Then they broke up, and who did the courts go after for child support? Him. not her partner. They went after him, so because he's the natural father, you know. But in that case, he was really the father. You know, he really did supply the sperm, but I don't think it was very honest, you know, for them to have used him that way. But anyway, I'm talking to some people in Wales right now about a play. So I've got a lot of other things going on.
A play about male domestic violence? Or?
Yeah, about a man who's a victim of domestic violence. Patrick Jones is a playwright in Wales. He's a playwright, he's a human rights activist and a poet. His brother is the bass player for the Manic Street Preachers, Nicky Wire. His original name was Nicky Jones. Manic Street Preachers are a Welsh alternative rock band. And he has written this play called Revelation, which is about a man who is a victim of domestic violence. His wife abuses him. And Patrick Jones interviewed lots of guys in the UK who were victims of domestic violence. He himself was a victim of domestic violence, and he kind of made this composite character, you know, with all their experiences that he put together and created this character. Nathan Sussex, who is an actor in Wales, has also done like voiceovers in British commercials and whatnot. He plays the guy.
Right.
And Stacey Daly is also an actress in England. She plays the wife. The play can be produced with minimum lighting, minimum stage set. It's a very, you know, the main thing about the play is the dialogue between these two people, what goes on behind closed doors that people don't see, and that's the message that they want to give to the public.
So now this is physical violence, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just emotional abuse.
No, well, it's emotional abuse as well, but it's also physical violence that she's abusive to him. In the play, they actually, you know, present this, but all the people involved in this production, the Patrick Jones, the playwright, and Nathan Sussex, the actor, and Stacey Daly, the actress, they're all in contact with me, and they want to get sponsorship in America for this play. They want the play to come across, you know, and show here as well. So we've been discussing that, the possibility
now,
of that.
Now, if people want to become a member of NCFM, they just go to the website.
Go to ncfm.org, and it tells you exactly how you can be a member, or you can contact me at my email, and I'll let you know how to become a member.
Okay. Now, what else do you have? Now, you wrote a thing called the Yang Manifesto, right? What do you want to tell us about that?
That was quite a while ago, so I'd have to find it, actually.
Was that in your more radical days?
Yeah. I try to be a little more conservative.
Diplomatic.
Yeah, a little more diplomatic these days. You know, if you have to talk to people in the government and that, you know, you have to present an image that's professional, or they're not going to talk to you. I mean, that's something that I've had to find out the hard way. You know, through the years, they're not going to take you seriously. They're not going to take your organization seriously. That's just the way it is. You know, if you want to talk to these people, you have to talk to them. You can't talk down at them. I mean, you can. In some cases, it sometimes works to, you know, raise a placard, you know, and march and things. But sometimes you really just have to look at the whole situation and be diplomatic, and you know, and write nice letters, and you know, that often actually gets you further.
But a lot of this stuff is just, it's so ingrained in us. I mean, people don't realize it's in movies, it's on TV shows. It's automatic. It's okay to just kind of insult the man or the guy in the situation. He's just the dumb guy. And
yeah, the guy says something and she slaps his face, you know, and that's acceptable. You know, we don't say, oh, that's domestic violence. You know, it's acceptable behavior.
But when a man, and it's wrong for anybody to assault anyone.
Oh yeah.
You know,
it is.
But in a lot of times it's self-defense. I mean, you're just trying to keep from getting your head, you know, crushed.
Right.
You know, you're just
like your friend with the iron.
My friend with the iron. Yeah. And I mean, he just slapped. He was just. He wasn't really even trying to slap her, but it did knock that out of her mouth. So he was.
I've heard similar
it was, you know,
stories.
A serious assault.
Guys,
thing.
You know, pushing the woman away just to get away from her, and or to stop her from stabbing him or something. You know, in one case I heard of, and basically, you know, she fell and accidentally stabbed a little girl, and the two guys, the two brothers, went to jail in Colorado. She didn't go to jail. She was attacking him with a knife. You know, so things like that. Yeah.
Now, what about men that are in jail that have been falsely accused of various things by women?
Yes, in fact, one of the guys I've been in contact with for a number of years, his name is William Hetherington, and he's in a prison in Michigan right now. His max date is coming up like January, February of next year, and he went to a prison in the 1980s. He and his wife were going through a divorce at the time, and she claimed that he raped her. He's always maintained his innocence. One of the things, I asked him on the phone one time, I said, in your opinion, what was it? And he did have a jury trial. What was it that convinced the jury to convict you? And he said it was the testimony of the police under oath in court. They testified that she had red marks on her face, where obviously he had tied some kind of tape or something to it, you know, to gag her or something when he raped her. The NCFM, at great expense, got a hold of the photos taken of his wife on the night in question, and there was no marks at all on her face. So he believes that basically the false testimony of the police in court is what convinced the jury that he really had.
So he was going through a divorce trial
at the time,
but he did have sexual relations with his wife while this was happening. He
says that yes, it was consensual sex.
Consensual sex
at the time,
and this was at his home.
Yeah, well, it was their home, I believe.
Okay,
it was their home.
But he was just living there at the time, or how you know?
I believe so. I have to go back and look at the whole situation, but I know they were going to get a divorce, but it was.
But you're saying the 80s. I mean, that's how long has he been in jail? 20.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say over 20 years.
20 years for raping his wife.
Yes. Exactly. There's even radical feminists in Michigan that say, you know, the guy's done more than enough time. You know, let him go. And they every time he's up for parole, they refuse. The main problem is that they say he won't confess. You know, if you don't confess to the crime, then you're not rehabilitatable. You know, I guess so. You're not eligible for parole. Well, how can you confess to something that you didn't do?
You didn't do. Yeah.
You know, it's a catch-22.
Yeah, darned if you do, darned if you don't.
Exactly. So. But his case is also mentioned on the NCFM website, so if people want to look at his case, they can as well.
So now, if someone is interested in, you know, all this, are there books or, you know, programs that you would recommend to?
Warren Farrell's The Myth of Male Power, I'm told, is like a must-read book. I haven't read it, I'm sorry, but it is a must-read. There's a book that a woman wrote. I'm trying to find what the name of it is. She posed as a man. She was, I guess, quite flat-chested, and I guess she was kind of manly in appearance, and she decided that she was going to be a man for a while, so she dressed like a man.
Like, yeah.
She went on to society. One of the main things that she found was that women are extremely rude to men.
Yeah.
That's what she says in the book. She said she was absolutely appalled at how women treat men compared to how they treated her when they thought she was a woman. Men also treat men differently than women as well, but she said she didn't realize herself how badly men get treated. When they thought she was a man, she felt that she was really treated badly. So I'd like to get a hold of that book.
So but she did say that men treated her worse as well as a man?
They didn't really treat her. They treated her differently.
Yeah.
You know, of course, you know, guys do treat. That's the chivalry again that
Right.
that
They
comes
weren't
up. You know, we have
anymore.
we're raised to be chivalrous.
Right.
You know, and so that's part of our conditioning.
Right. Now, what's the NCFM position on women in combat roles?
I think the NCFM doesn't really, oppose women being in the military. And in fact, the NCFM doesn't oppose women being required to register for selective service. I don't oppose it. I don't see why they shouldn't be required to register for selective service. If you are of age and you are a citizen of this country, why should you not be required to be, available for combat duty if this country is attacked? I don't see a problem with it. If they're in the military, they're generals in the military, why can't they register for selective service?
Right, I mean, that's right. I mean, we have women in the military now and equal rights, equal pay, all that. But generally the women are not so much in combat roles, right? I mean, most of the majority are in some other kind of...
they may be in a combat situation or they're actually, and there have been women killed. There have been, several,
sure.
I think, 1,000 women killed in Iraq.
Right.
I'm not saying that they aren't facing danger just as much as men, they are, but in reference to combat duty, actually taking a gun and going into and facing an enemy that's, in a firefight, they're usually not involved in that. They are involved in, like, bomb disposal, and they do, of course they have died in Iraq, but they're not allowed, actually, is the terminology. The law doesn't allow them to be actually in a combat duty situation.
So is NCFM is anti-feminist?
No, I wouldn't say that the NCFM
really
is anti-feminist. There are, in fact, some women who are in our organization who used to be in the National Organization for Women. Right. One of our members, Deborah Watson in Dallas, she is now she was the liaison for the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of the NCFM. She used to be in the Tarrant County chapter of the National Organization for Women. Warren Farrell, as I said, wrote The Myth of Male Power. He used to be with the National Organization for Women. So I don't think that we would say that we're anti-feminists as much as we are actually egalitarian. We believe in equal rights for everyone, that men are entitled to the same rights as women and women are entitled to the same rights as men. We don't believe that there should be this difference. If a man is a victim of domestic violence, he is entitled to assistance. And in fact, there is an organization in Maine called the Domestic Abuse Helpline for Men and Women. And I'm in contact a lot with Jan Brown, their director, and they help everyone, who is a victim of domestic violence, men and women. They don't differentiate. And that's the way that I believe. I believe everyone is entitled to assistance. We're all human beings, and we're all entitled, to get the same care and concern and compassion from each other.
Well, what's the number one thing or problem that NCFM has with the National Organization of Women? Is it what you told me earlier, the bill they have, or it's a
Woods versus Shewry?
Yeah.
Well, Woods versus Shewry was a lawsuit. It was a lawsuit in California. Some men there were victims of domestic violence. In fact, James Woods is one of the main ones. And he went to a local domestic violence shelter in California, and he wanted to get assistance from them. and they refused to help him. His daughter was also involved in the lawsuit as well. And the court ruled against him at the time. Well, they've got one judge in California, I believe a circuit judge, to rule in their favor that it is a violation of men's constitutional rights for domestic violence shelters to refuse service to a man just because he's a man. That's a violation of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Right.
However, they did not say exactly what service the violence shelter has to give to the man. As far as they're concerned, it could just be a voucher for a hotel. But he's not entitled to exactly the same services as women. He's not entitled to get, into the shelter and to get a victim's advocate to help him and all of that. That he's entitled to, a voucher at a hotel where him and his, child or children can go. The feminists saw that as a victory. The California Domestic Violence Women's Association saw it as a partial victory because the judge did not agree that men are entitled to exactly the same services. I have a problem with somebody who claims they're egalitarian and they're actually happy that somebody is denied the same service as somebody else. How is that egalitarian? How is that being a good Samaritan? How is that, being a good human being to another human being, to actually literally be happy that they're denied help? There's something about that that's just really, really wrong. But at any rate, so we would have a problem with that. In fact, I've been in touch with the Kentucky Domestic Violence Association, and they have, I think it's 15 shelters under their auspices. And those women assured me that they help everyone. They help men, women, but I looked at their website. There are no pictures of any men with their children in the playrooms with the women. There are no pictures of men and women sitting down together in support groups. There are no pictures of men, with a victim's advocate, hand on their shoulder, it's going to be okay, or discussing the situation with a victim's advocate. There are no, in the study aids that they have to give their domestic violence advocates their degrees, their certificates, there are no required readings that deal with men who are victims of domestic violence. There are no required viewings of DVDs that deal with men who are victims of domestic violence. There's not even any suggested readings of men that are victims of domestic violence. So how is it that they can claim that they help men if they don't have the expertise because they don't teach their domestic violence advocates how to help men?
Well, Barry,
so I
want
have
to
a
thank
problem
you for being on the program. We're out of time, but we'll have to get you back to continue this discussion. You bring out a lot of great points, and I really do appreciate your advocacy on the behalf of men. Thanks for being our guest.
Thank you, Tony.